So here's a little bit of an update. I've been trying to figure out what's the best way to replace the resistive power cord. And whereas I may go with a capacitive dropper later when the whole thing is working, for the time being, I thought the best thing to do is just do a resistive dropper. Problem is there's almost no place underneath here where you can put anything. So here's the plan at the moment. A couple of 270 watt 270 ohm 20 watt resistors in parallel to give me 135, which is the stated resistance of the power cord. And then for the only space that I have is right here. So the plan is to fix that on here like this. Now I may just fix it on temporarily just to make sure it works. So I might just like tack it with hot glue at the bottom, and then if it works, I'll do it properly. So that's the plan for that. Because if it does work, I can always do something like cut a slot in here so that the base of this can actually go inside the back panel and is not quite so obvious. But yeah, that's really the only space, and as well, if there was space underneath, there'd be nowhere for it to properly ventilate. So I'm hoping this is going to work. We'll give that a shot. I guess the only other news is I've been building up the proper valve tube set. So the postman brought some goodies this morning. The first is the little package from the Ukraine, which is my 6K7 in its original, if you like, in the proper metal housing that is much smaller than the glass ones. Because this doesn't have the same valve set in it that's on the drawing. One of the substitutes looks close, but the other one looks, I don't know, looks very different from what should be in there. So I decided to get the proper valve set. So this is the 6K7, and not only that, but I got a whole box of them. The other goodies that arrived today came from stateside, and this is a pair of 6Q7s in the nice metal enclosure. So at least I have at the moment the same tube set that's in the drawing. However, the one I'm still waiting for, which is the most critical one, is the 25Z6, the 25L6, because that's the one that is really, the one that's in there is way too physically big, doesn't fit properly. So we'll get cracking on with the dropper, and then when the 25L6 arrives, we'll start to begin to see about plugging this little baby in. Some more on the Radialva. I think I now have a full set of the correct valves to go in it. And so, for example, here is the 25L6 that was fitted and is squashed in and jammed up against everything. Here is an original metal enclosure type. And I think we can safely say this is what this particular set was designed for. So that will fit nicely in here without causing any stress to anybody. So, yep, we're getting there. Another major piece of the puzzle has been sorted out for me. As you remember, there's lots of gunk all around this, and I was really puzzling as to what this is, because these are the 2IF cans, and so I really wasn't sure what this was. And thanks to a colleague who's started restoring a similar model to this, it turns out this is basically the electrolytics. There are 2 electrolytics in this can. And I've never come across a square can before that contained electrolytics, so it never even occurred to me that that's what it was. But of course that would explain all the gunk. So it means I can see about getting this out of here and taking it off and emptying out the contents. And of course, as you remember, mine had these two big electrolytics rammed in underneath. So and these are 50 microfarad. Circuits is 100. So at least now I know where I can put those so that they're not squashing everything here, and if necessary I can put in the 100 microfarad ones a little bit later on. So having a colleague working on a similar model is extremely helpful, because I was very reluctant to mess with this because it's quite difficult to get it out because of how it's mounted from underneath, and in here are basically all of the coils for the different wavelengths. So it's going to be a little bit of a fiddle to get this can off, but off it has to come, and yeah, we'll get on with it. And of course, since I got my new valve tester, I'll be able to test all these valves properly now. Right, what else? Oh yes, the dropper for the heater chain. Apologies for the color coding on the wiring. It's what I had around and it'll do for prototyping. But basically what I'm going to do is fit that on here. And this will then basically be the 135 ohm resistor to replace the resistive power cord between the main supply and the heater chain. And if that all works nicely, then I may, as I said, cut a slot here on the top so that I can slide this thing inside the chassis and make it less obtrusive. So, lots to be getting on with on this particular set. As I've said before, it's the smallest set I've ever worked on, and it's by far the largest amount of work. Well, it was messy, but I finally managed to get this electrolytic can out. And well, I think you can see here that all these wires perished a long time ago. And earlier on I noticed when I was taking out the original 50 microfarad caps, I found some stub wires sticking up that I didn't know what they were. And well, guess what? They all go back here. So, mystery solved. One slight little tragedy along the way. In order to get at the mounting screws, there's a little capacitor, coupling capacitor here for the antenna, and the other end of which goes to a coil. I didn't make a note of where it came from, and when I just went to lift it up out of the way so I could get at the mounting nuts in here, just fell out. So at some point I got to figure out how I reconnect all that up. So yeah, something tells me this one's going to make me work for it. Right, let's see if I can empty the contents of this can out so I can either put other electrolytics in it or at least in some way salvage the thing. Right, I managed to get all the gunk out of the can here. And I think it being square was an advantage because I didn't need to resort to heat. I just used a parting knife, you know, that I'd used for veneering or doing guitar work. That's where I got it. And I was just, I removed the hard wax seal at the bottom, and then I was just able to slide the knife down around all four sides and get it to release from the metal, and then grab it by the wires, and it just pulled right out of there. So that's nice. Now I just gotta clean all this guy up and yeah, see where we go from here. Okay, I think that's my first attempt at emptying out an old electrolytic can like that. So all adds to the experience. Right, that's that pretty much cleaned up. So it cleaned up reasonably well with a little bit of alcohol. And if I replace the 50 microfarad caps that are in there with these guys, then two of them will happily fit in there without any trouble at all. However, one of the things I'm pondering, and I don't want to be rushing as I go with this guy, is I need a space for these dropper resistors, and right at the moment I'm putting them over here because there's a slight little gap beside the speaker. But if I don't need to put the electrolytics in here, then I have a nice piece of space here to build a really meaty heatsink and put those resistors on there, and that might be more helpful. So I'm not going to rush into anything on this one. I'll take it as slow and steady as we go. Still, major step forward at this point. Okay, so the electrolytic is removed, and the two replacements are underneath, and at least I'll leave it like that for now. Here is my prototype for the mains dropper, or sorry, for the power cord resistive substitute, which is basically two 270 ohm 20 watt resistors in parallel, which will go from the main supply and then feeding the heater chain. Yeah, so at least physically it fits, and we'll see later if it works. So next, I guess, is going to be check all the valves, make sure they're okay, and then remount the speaker, and we should be getting real close for our first test on this one. I'm just waiting for some bits and pieces to arrive, which hopefully will come tomorrow, to finish off the fly leaf for my valve tester, so I can test all these valves.